All of us have the power within to be abundantly supported as we desire, says a young, conventionally attractive white girl from a Western country, so it must be true. Many of you have probably come across the law of attraction at some point in your lives and have seen this type of rhetoric promoted by people who are into manifestation. Maybe it's something you believe in yourself. If you're not that familiar with it though, the law of attraction is basically the idea that our thoughts and what we focus on attract things into our lives. There are many different ideas of like how they work and exactly what their definitions are, but the one that I'm going to focus on, because I can't possibly address all of them, is kind of the common perspective that I've come across, which is that you can manifest basically whatever you want as long as you have the right mindset and use manifestation techniques like journaling about something as if you already have it, or repeating affirmations, etc. I have a video from a while back where I go over scientific evidence for the law of attraction, or tried to. I really couldn't find any. The main evidence is just people interpreting their personal experiences to be evidence without being able to demonstrate a causal link between the two. But what I want to talk about in this video is how I personally feel that a lot of people who believe they have manifested being rich via the law of attraction don't acknowledge or even seem to recognize the privileges they've had that have likely played a huge role in their ability to get what they think they manifested. So there's a view that's been getting more and more common in New Age and law of attraction communities that the difference between being rich and poor is all just in your mind. If you're poor, it's because you have a bad money mindset or limiting beliefs such as money is hard to make, money is the root of all evil, money doesn't buy happiness, rich people are snobs. If you want to become wealthy, you have to shift that perspective and look at money as a form of energy. Be grateful for it. View it as a blank slate. Don't give it a negative personality, etc. An example of this shift would be, there is a retreat in Bali that I really want to go to. OMG, but it's $1,000 to go. I don't have enough money right now. I guess I can't go. Immediately change to, I may not have the $1,000 right now, but I trust in my money-making skills and the universe enough to go into debt for a little while. I'm booking my ticket right now. In my opinion, not only is this perception that your mindset determines your financial situation ignorant and inaccurate, but it can also be very harmful, which is why I want to talk about it. Let's just get right down to it. I don't know if they genuinely believe this or if it just kind of comes off this way to me, but I get the impression that many people, often influencers, online content creators, believe that the only thing that can make a person privileged in relation to how much money they make as an adult is coming from a family with money or growing up rich. But what you'll come to see, or what probably many of you have already realized, is that the vast majority of these people who hold this perception are conventionally attractive, thin, white, literate, able-bodied people who come from developed countries. If you're able to hear a little bit more about their personal background stories, you'll probably come to find out that many of them had safety nets to fall into if things didn't go well, like being able to move back in with parents if they couldn't afford to live on their own, those types of things. And I don't think these are all just coincidences. I mean, technically they could be, but when you look at law of attraction kind of falls into the category of New Age spirituality, and when you look at people who do well online as creators in that genre as a whole, it's the same thing. It's the same people succeeding. If you look at social media as a whole, it's the same thing. If you look at life as a whole, it's unfortunately the same thing. I don't think a creator has to be constantly acknowledging their privilege every single time they upload a YouTube video or post an Instagram story. But in my opinion, the privilege problem occurs when privileged people act like everyone has access to the same resources and opportunities as they do. Therefore, everyone can do what they're doing, and they have no awareness of how other people live and what obstacles other people face that might prevent them from or make it much more difficult for them to achieve the same things as a more privileged person. Attributing all your success to your mindset or even hard work, of course those things play a role, but they're far from the only things that play a role. So first of all, of course, growing up with money is a huge advantage. I do see a lot of people on social media accusing every single person who lives a seemingly amazing lifestyle as being a trust fund baby. I think most of the time this is wrong. I think one reason a lot of people get this impression is because a lot of influencers who are in this genre do try to play down how much financial or otherwise support they've had over the course of their lives, and they're just not as good as storytellers as they think they are. I think it's obvious that many do come from middle or upper class families, which is fine, or have had financial support before they started making money online, which is also fine. But because of those things, they have advantages and more opportunities and resources than many people do. An example of this is a YouTuber who I've talked about a couple times on my channel, Elise Parker. I don't mean to pick on her specifically, I just don't pay enough attention to that many problematic people to get a lot of variety and examples, and she's pretty problematic, so she somehow seems to fit into like every video I do. Anyways, Elise dropped out of college just a few months before graduating and moved from Georgia to Hawaii with only $500 to her name, and then got on food stamps while she was there. She now uses that to make it sound like she started from the bottom, basically. First of all, anyone who graduates college in the US with a positive amount of money had their parents pay for it, okay? Like, she wasn't a child actor. I doubt she had a full ride scholarship. She would have mentioned it at some point. She has said that her parents are middle class, so if you have middle class parents who can afford to pay US college tuition, having only $500 to your name in your early 20s does not mean you know what it's like to basically be impoverished. Also, moving to, I'm pretty sure, the most expensive state in the country, just because you want to, is in and of itself a huge privilege. Like, even if you chose to get on food stamps when you're there, it wasn't like she was some single mom working 2 jobs to support her family. Like, she chose to do that because she didn't want to get a job, okay? Long story. Anyone who is genuinely struggling and did not have a safety net would not move to Hawaii just because they wanted to live somewhere pretty. Having family members or friends who can provide a safety net for you is a huge privilege that not everyone has, and it makes any risk you take way less risky. There's nothing wrong with parents paying your college tuition or having safety nets. The problem lies in acting like those things weren't there for you, acting like they didn't allow you to have opportunities that most people don't have, and then pretending like you just did everything on your own, just you and your mindset and your affirmations, and then promoting that online to an audience of often teens and young adults. There are many content creators who exaggerate their rags to riches stories and or act like they didn't receive any help ever. Let's look at an example of that. This is Lacey Daunt, the founder of the Free Life Movement, which is a relatively new training platform and community that teaches people how to start their own online businesses by becoming distributors for an MLM or multi-level marketing company called Enagic, which makes ionizing machines that produce Kangen water. Some of these images are blurred out in case I used them in my previous video about the breakaway movement, which is another similar training platform. Anyways, Lacey says, "It's wild that I will be buying a home with everything I've earned for myself. No help from parents or grandparents. This was all me." She probably just means that her family isn't like helping her pay the down payment or the mortgage on her home, which is kind of weird because her fiance Steven is also earns a lot of money through the same business, so I'm not sure why he wouldn't be paying for some of it. But the way it comes off to me, at least, is that she's just done everything on her own with no help from anyone. At some other point, though, she has said, "I've been blessed with a lot of things. People have called me spoiled and even a moocher, probably because I genuinely have been given a lot. 2 years ago, I was basically given a yoga studio to run and open. I was given a free place to live with my office job and a free car to use and have." But then she also says, "Don't give me that I'm not Lacey bullcrap, because it's bullcrap and I'll call you out on it." Within starting this new CEO movement, which is the MLM group that she was in before the MLM group that she was in before the MLM group that she started after she was already at the top ranks of another MLM that she quit to join this MLM. Within starting this new CEO movement, I've made over 15K in 3 weeks. Steven made over 6K with zero online experience whatsoever. You can all do this. But then she also says, Please understand, my results are not typical. I'm not implying you'll duplicate them. I have the benefit of practicing direct response marketing and advertising for years and have an established following as a result. So she just goes back and forth between admitting that she was given a lot and had a lot of advantages and pretending like she did it all on her own, and so since she can do it, everyone can do it. But why do these people have any reason to lie or play things up or down? Well, most of the time, they're trying to sell you something, whether it be an MLM product or a course or book or retreat or mentorship program. They want you to know that they were once where you are. So you're more likely to think, oh, maybe I can one day be where they are. They came from nothing, so if they can do it, anyone can do it. And if you believe that, you're more likely to buy what they're trying to sell, and bam, that's how they manifest money. It's basically a cycle of, I manifested being rich and living my dream life. You also want to manifest being rich and living your dream life. Well, since I did it, I can teach you how to do it. You give them money. That's how they do it. And we're back at the start of the cycle. But anyways, so we have folks who grew up middle or upper class. We have people who downplay the fact that they do. We have people who can't make up their mind what story they want to tell. But then we also do have people who grew up poor and will use that to kind of act like they aren't privileged in any way. And again, if they can do it, so can anyone. To anyone who didn't have much growing up and has been able to create a much more comfortable life for yourself, I don't want to devalue that achievement at all, because that's amazing and I'm like really happy for you, of course. But I think with these content creators specifically, who grew up with less money, they still had many advantages. Because I only speak English, the majority of the people I come across on social media, and therefore people I have in mind when making these videos, are people who speak English and live in Western countries. There are two huge advantages right there. Majority of places around the world make it possible and often easy for English speakers to travel to. You know, if you speak English as your first language, or if you're fortunate enough to be pretty fluent in it despite it not being your first language, you can basically go wherever you want. You can navigate airports, you can find people in other countries that speak the same language as you, but say you're from a developing country like Sri Lanka and you speak Sinhala, it's going to be so much more difficult for somebody seeking a better life to move to a new developed country. Of course, you can learn English in adulthood, but a lot of people don't have the resources or access to do that. They don't have time. Even those who do have time, usually if you learn a language later in life, you're more likely to kind of have an accent that you don't get rid of. And unfortunately, people with accents in Western countries, or the US at least, aren't really treated as equally as fairly as people who don't have accents. While it might be easy to ignore this or not be aware of this if you live in France or the US or New Zealand, there are still many people who don't have access to education and therefore haven't learned to read or write. According to the World Bank, 14% of adults worldwide are not literate. In India, only 74% of adults are literate. In Afghanistan, it's 43%. And in Guinea, it's only 32%. You can also see that living in a developing country and having a lower income both affect literacy rate. In the least developed countries, only 65% of people are literate. Individuals with a low income have a rate of 61%, for lower middle, it's 76%, for middle, it's 86%, and upper middle is 96%. All of these things are connected, so not having one of the advantages I've been listing is going to make it more likely that a person also won't have one or more of the other ones. If you grow up in Afghanistan, you're not going to have as many opportunities as someone who grows up in the US. If you grow up poor in Afghanistan, you're still not going to have as many opportunities as someone who grows up poor in the US, because poor for the US is not the same as poor for developing countries. I don't mean to diminish the hardships that anyone has experienced growing up poor in a developed country, but it's just the truth of the matter that it's not the same. So here's a little scenario I want to get your opinions on. Let me know what you think. Imagine if one of these people who is a content creator or just a person in general who believes they have manifested their wealth. It's all in their mindset. Imagine if all that money was taken away. They were transported into the body of an Afghan who lives in Afghanistan and is, say, 25 years old, doesn't really matter, only speaks Dari, they don't speak English. Their family's poor, they weren't able to get an education, because there wasn't a school in the vicinity of their village, or they had to stay home and help their parents with farm work or something. The reason doesn't matter, but they couldn't get an education, okay? Pretty much all their life circumstances are completely different, but the one thing they can keep is their belief in the law of attraction and manifestation and their knowledge about it. I wonder if they would be able to create the same success in those circumstances as they have in their actual circumstances. I don't think they would, but I wonder what their plan would be. Let me know your guys' thoughts on that. Now, some of you might think I'm like making up the most extreme circumstances I can think of that apply to not really that many people, but if that's you, I'd recommend watching some like educational documentaries or reading articles on what people's lives are like around the world, because I'm not making up a story that applies to virtually nobody. Like, there are a lot of people in similar situations, unfortunately. And one docuseries that I want to recommend, just because I think it's really good and it kind of applies to this, is Most Dangerous Ways to School. I'll put a link to the playlist in the description, but it basically just follows the daily routine of kids who literally have to often risk their lives to get to school. It's really sad, but it's just a good documentary to kind of educate yourself on just how different people's lives are from, like, I know that most of my viewers are from the US, UK, and Germany. Like, we have it pretty dang good. I also wonder if being on social media was an option, would these people be able to manifest the same income elsewhere? Or is it kind of dependent on the job you do? Because generally you can only manifest more money, or like whatever amount of money you want, if you are self-employed. Like, if you work a salary job, sure, you can maybe manifest raises, but that's only going to get you so far. Even for many self-employed people, like, there's just certain jobs where you can't say, oh, I want to become a millionaire, and then have that be a feasible possibility without charging exorbitant amounts of money for your products or services, which is what many law of attraction creators do. Like, my mom, for example, is self-employed as a hairstylist. If she wanted to make multiple six figures in a year, she would have to charge hundreds or thousands of dollars for haircuts. But see, in order to successfully do that and actually retain customers, she would have to convince them that this price she's charging is actually worth it. One method she could use if she took advice from law of attraction creators is that she could tell them, you know, if you spend a lot of money on this haircut, then the universe is gonna send you back even more money. I don't think she would do that, and I don't think her clients would fall for that, but if you're a law of attraction creator whose main audience demographic is teens and young adults, you're gonna have a better chance being able to do that. People like Heather, aka Activation Vibration, can charge $222.22 for an abundance codes course. Or Lior Alexandra can charge $447 for a prosperity school, because of the type of the mindset they promote, and therefore the type of the mindset their followers on social media are more likely to have. And when we look at Heather and Lior, they're both young, thin, conventionally attractive, able-bodied, literate, English-speaking girls living in developed countries. And I'm not sure if Lior is white or not, but she kind of passes as white, if you know what I mean. And I assume Heather is white as well. If these girls weren't all those things, if they didn't have all those advantages, would they still be living the life they are now? Would they still be able to charge these amounts of money and actually have people pay that much for their courses or their schools? No, absolutely not. I'm absolutely 100% sure that they wouldn't be selling the same amount of courses and have the same amount of followers and all that stuff if they had fewer of those privileges. So in my opinion, people's perceived abilities to manifest money have a lot more to do with circumstances out of their control than just their mindset. I'm open to being convinced of anything as long as I'm provided with sufficient evidence for it, but I just haven't seen that yet. And I think a much more plausible explanation for why people believe they're manifesting things is that if you're partaking in manifestation techniques like journaling or affirmations or whatever, you're putting more time and thinking about something more. And the more something is on your mind, the more likely you are to take action steps toward reaching that goal or dream. But instead of attributing the results to action steps, people often are attributing it to the law of attraction. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I've never seen anybody be able to demonstrate a causal link between the two things. It's just kind of like this thing happened and then this thing happened, therefore the first thing caused the second thing, and that's just not how things work. For example, here's a little scenario. Someone's trying to manifest a promotion at work. They do a bunch of law of attraction stuff and then boom, 3 weeks later they got promoted. Must be law of attraction, right? Well, not necessarily. I know that, especially in New Age spirituality, people don't really like the idea that coincidences can happen. But at the end of the day, that is a possible explanation. I highly recommend checking out Vsauce's video called Spooky Coincidences if you kind of struggle to accept that certain strange events that seem related could actually just be coincidental. But another explanation is that because the individual was thinking about the promotion more and they were doing things like journaling, which again makes them think about it more, led to them taking action steps toward getting that promotion, like making sure they're always showing up to work on time, getting work done efficiently, heck, maybe even sucking up to the boss. I mean, they might not even be conscious of the things that they had started doing to try to get that promotion, but it's still possible that they were doing things. But because the person went in with this belief in the law of attraction and expected to attract something, they're going to be much more likely to just attribute the results to manifestation rather than consider other possibilities. I mean, honestly, every single person that I've ever spoken to that has shared with me their experience with law of attraction or manifestation that I can remember has never been open to me offering other possible explanations for their results. Not a single one. Last thing I want to talk about is that I think promotion of this mindset, the way some people do it, not everybody, but some of it can lead to like really poor financial decisions. I mean, in the Bali retreat stories, for example, like the person was encouraging people, making it seem like it was the preferable choice to go into debt to go to a retreat versus saving your money and not going. A person who has less than $1,000 should be going to Bali to go on a retreat because the universe is going to send them the money back as long as they believe in their money-making skills. I'm not a financial advisor, but please don't do that. Like, don't go into debt for a luxury, for a vacation. That's not a smart decision. That's a really, really bad decision. Like, going into debt is a serious thing. It's not just like, oh, like you borrowed $20 from your friend and you're gonna pay him at the end of the week once you get your pay stub for the month. Like, take it seriously. Going into debt can affect you for a long time, okay? Please don't do that. Please never go into debt for a retreat or somebody's $700 mentorship program or an MLM. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but just because you trust in your abilities to make money doesn't mean you have any. Like, I used to play softball and I trusted in my abilities to catch the ball, but sometimes I didn't. So just be reasonable. Like, if you have less than $1,000, you should be spending your money wisely and responsibly. Here's another two that I love. If you watched my last video on the breakout movement, you might remember this first one. If you're struggling financially, it's because of your mindset and lack of desire to put in the work. No, okay? Plot this girl in a situation where she has a bunch of her privileges taken away. See how long it is before she realizes that's just not how the world works. I'd honestly give it a while because it's really hard to admit you're wrong when you say something this ridiculous, but eventually I think she'd figure out that most people don't struggle financially because they have a bad mindset and don't know how to work hard. I bet most low-income people work harder on a daily basis than this girl ever will in her entire life. When opportunity knocks, poor people don't notice opportunities to make money. Usually don't take advantage of them. Wonder, how much will it cost me? Wealthy people keep eyes open for all opportunities. Take advantage of opportunities. Think, how much can I make? First of all, again, no. Second of all, poor people often don't have as many opportunities. This graphic makes it seem like there's just all these opportunities sitting right in front of their faces. You know, they don't take advantage of them. They just have all. I mean, the person makes it sound like poor people have all these jobs that they can just like go and apply for that would make them so much money than they're currently making, but they're just too lazy. They're not paying attention, they're stupid. Or they don't take opportunities because they're concerned about the price and they wonder how much it's gonna cost them. Apparently nowadays, it's absurd for somebody without much money to consider the cost of things they'll be spending their money on. I mean, what are they thinking? You gotta think long term, not short term. If these people just spent $10,000 on MLM products to join Lacey's Free Life movement, then they could be making 7 figures just like her. Even though her results aren't typical and everyone can do it and she's been given everything and nothing. But wealthy people are always thinking about how much they can make from something, which in the social media world seems to mean that most of them forget about people and ethics. So to conclude, I think it's really important to not only be aware of your own privileges and what role they play in your life, what effect they have on your circumstances and what you're able to do or not able to do, but to also be aware that the people you follow on social media probably have many advantages. It's not like there's a lot more that goes into a person's financial situation than just their mindset or mindset and hard work. Also, please don't, if you're into the law of attraction, don't just make poor, stupid financial decisions that you're gonna regret because you think you're gonna make that money back. Something that is a good financial decision is everyone who watches this video PayPals me money, like at least $50 to $100, ideally, because everyone deserves to be abundant. And this is how I'm trying to manifest money. I just want people to give it to me without doing anything. So also if you don't PayPal me money, that's kind of mean because it's like you're saying that you don't think I deserve that and you'll probably end up poor because you're basically telling the universe if you're not spending money, the universe is gonna see that and they're gonna think that you don't want money. So I wouldn't take my chances if I were you.